Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Jane the Virgin, Season 1, Episode 1, Chapter 3. In this episode, Jane comes to the same conclusion I did, which is, if your vagina is going to be ripped open by a baby, you may as well fuck now. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha, and thank you very much to Claire for commissioning this episode. What's up, Claire? I am really enjoying this show, y'all. I actually got Owen to watch the first episode with me last night. I'm hoping to pull him into the show with me, although he does get a little agitated when I get him hooked on shows that I'm covering, because then he can't watch as much as he wants whenever he wants, unless he watches without me, which is inadvisable, because then he accidentally will spoil me, I bet. Not based on any evidence of the past, I'm just saying, I bet. So, this episode, I'm so glad that this comes up, because really what we're coping with here is Jane realizing that things haven't gone the way that she planned. And so maybe it's time to make a major adjustment to some other plans that she had, since, evidently, God laughed at her plans. And I'm really appreciative of the fact that she has sort of revisited this, because I was thinking the same thing. Now, she doesn't wind up sleeping with Michael like she planned this episode. And ultimately, I'm really glad. But I do like the fact that she had this thought process and that this came up for her, So we start the episode with a young Jane catching a firefly, and she makes a wish that she would grow boobs and that someone would want to touch them. And we see this scene where she is about to hook up with a boy, and she tells him that she is waiting for marriage to have sex, and he immediately dumps her. And this is one of those things that, personally, I have never run into this because I wasn't interested in waiting until marriage. I would assume that plenty of people would actually react this way. I am really curious about how, I think a lot of boys would probably keep it going and hope that they could change her mind. And I'm not saying that's the way to go, but in my experience, men are very convinced of the fact that they can get women to do what they want them to do eventually. And I just feel like that seems pretty likely. It's probably somewhat dependent on how other people perceived her dedication. So if she was known as being someone who was pretty religious and committed, then maybe they would believe that she wouldn't change her mind, and they just trusted it's not going to happen. But nevertheless, the fact that this kid dumped her right away is rough. And she's being comforted by her grandmother and her mother, and they are each giving her very, very different advice. Her mother says, maybe just don't bring up the virgin thing right away. And her grandmother is like, if he was willing to dump you because of this, that means that you're not, he's not the right guy. And if you're not telling him off the bat, letting him think that you take it slow, that's a lie by omission. And little lies spiral into big balls of evil. And I love Shamara saying big balls of evil, really. I really agree, actually, with what she said about, little lies spiraling, because it's just, it's sometimes, there are little baby lies, which are essentially to save somebody's feelings about something that really ultimately doesn't matter. Oh, that dinner was really good. Oh, that dress looks great on you. Whatever. just genuinely, if there's a thing that someone cannot fix and what's done is done and their feelings will be hurt, it doesn't do any harm, in my opinion, to just be nice in the moment. But if there is something like a fundamental about you and you're hiding it, and I think choosing to not have sex before marriage in like the dating context is a pretty fundamental thing about you. I have to agree that if you're going to go into things and lie about that right away and make it seem like it's just that you like to take things slow, I personally feel like you're getting things off on the wrong foot, and it's not going to work ultimately if you had to begin things that way and if he had to believe that in order to give you a chance when he wouldn't have otherwise. I mean, you know? So I think she's right. But I was sort of taken aback by her saying a lie by omission, because that wasn't what I was thinking of it as. And yet that's true. It kind of is. So Jane asks, how will I know when the right one is there? And I love grandmother says, you will know it in your heart. And her mother says, and by that tingly feeling between your legs. And what winds up coming up is that she is having that feeling for someone else. And this is I was appreciative. This is so important to me. She really does have great chemistry with the actor playing Raphael. And I was so worried that it was going to, like, this is so wild, but I'm just going to sort of talk about this out of the gate here. I have been trying to see things from Michael's point of view, and for the most part, I have been successful in that. He has been blunter than I would be, and he has been a little bit, like, shitty about certain things in a way that bothered me a little bit. But for the most part, a lot of the time, I was like, man, but I can't be mad at him because this is just such a sucky situation. And he is trying to be straightforward with her about how he feels about it. And then this whole thing happened with him deciding to lie to Jane about what's going on with Petra. And it really turned a corner. And I realized that ultimately all it comes down to is that he doesn't respect what's important to Jane. And I'm putting this aside from the whole you shouldn't lie fundamentally like this to someone you're about to marry. Like, that obviously is true. And this is not the way to start a relationship. I also want to mention, though, he is hiding something else, because we had that encounter with his brother in the first episode where it seems like there is something kind of major in his history. Because the way his brother framed it was, everybody thinks you're such a great guy and they don't know. And of course, it could just be that he's sort of hamming it up for the sake of the threat that he's clearly making. Or it could be that whatever it is that Michael is hiding is that big a deal. And I don't know what that would even look like. If it's like, I mean, we don't know anything about Michael's dating history. So it could be something that he did to a partner. Maybe he left somebody pregnant high and dry, which would really be something. Maybe he killed somebody. Maybe he robbed somebody. Maybe he sold out a friend somehow. You know, I don't know. But we know Michael is capable of keeping things from Jane to begin with. So I shouldn't be surprised at the fact that he is being this shady right now. But I am a little, and I'm disappointed. As I started off saying, the keeping of the secret is already a bad enough thing. But what bothers me is that what is important to Jane is that this child, who will have her DNA as well, so this is very much her child as well, she wants this child to grow up in a home with parents who love each other and who will provide a stable upbringing and love the child. And obviously, Michael really does not care about that. And that's what bums me out a little bit here, is that the lying is already bad enough, but it seems like he could really give a fuck about the well-being of this infant that she is going to be giving birth to. And it's wild to me that he thinks he can be part of her life. Like, he can marry her. She will give this child up. Does he think that she will just never check up on things again? Does he think that she won't be like kind of keeping an eye out for indications that something is wrong? Like, he seems to really think if he can just fool her and she drops the child off, that will be the end of it. And I just don't, it's the sort of thing, like, it's really what I'm saying. He is not thinking about things in the way that her abuela has said. A small lie will snowball out of control. This is not a small lie. And the fact that he's trying to keep Petra out of the investigation as well, the way that this is spreading, where there is a murder, and he is actively tampering with a crime scene, lying to his superiors, and covering up for somebody who could potentially be a murderer, as well as the fact that Zaz was involved in something bigger, that's why they were surveilling him. So ultimately, Michael is interfering with his own career here. All of this is adding up to, how much are you willing to risk to not have your future wife keep this child? That sucks, dude. Like, genuinely, the whole thing about you guys getting married earlier too, I really hate this for her. So anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself here. Let's actually go through this beat by beat. First, we have the amazing opening scene where Jane is trying to get her shoes out of her mom's room, and Rogelio, is that his name? I can't remember already. But he is in the room with her mother, and they have to hide it. She gets her shoes finally and gets out of there, and she goes and meets Michael in the car. And this is when she tells him, even though everything else has gone off track, I'm engaged to the man that I love and want to be with, and I think we should have sex. And I love that there's this choir singing as he takes a deep breath and has a real moment of oh my God, are you serious? And then we jump to him asking, are you nervous? It will be quick, easy, in and out. And I was just like, wait, what? And then she says, can you come with me? And he says, that's not really appropriate. And I was like, wait, what? And then he just says, just tell them everything you saw. And the camera pulls out, and she is standing there with him, and they are about to go into an interrogation room, and it's about the case. And I was like, oh my God, they got me really good. They got me really good with this one. And I also love the fact that when he starts talking to her, she sort of leans into him, and he says, what? And she says, I just find it kind of sexy when you talk all cop. And I was like, ugh, I hate this, because I ACAB forever, but I also kind of get why she would have this reaction. I totally understand it, girl. And I have a 15-minute break coming up, and my car's back seat, my car seat's totally reclined. And I was like, dude, oh my God. So she goes in to be questioned. And then we cut over to Raphael and Petra, and he is reading these articles about potentially what could have happened to Zaz, which are evidently wildly speculative and kind of upsetting. And she tells him to stop reading them because they're just going to bum him out, and they start talking about how his father wants to distance the hotel from Zaz. And just ultimately, the dude who was Raphael's best friend, Raphael is meant to just turn his back on because of what happened and not treat like he was a friend at all, which is not only like deeply dishonest, but also it's a cruel thing to do to your son. And it's, of course, super selfish. So Petra is over here and she's like talking to him about, cause he says, I have to find Zaz's brother and find out what happened. And she's adjusting her makeup and says, I didn't even know he had a brother. But the vibe she gets when he says, I have to find him, she seems kind of like worried. And when she says, I didn't even know he had a brother, I mean, of course she has to say that, right? So she's looking in the mirror and all of a sudden she notices that her necklace is gone. And she suddenly remembers that when Zaz started choking her, when she dumped him, basically, the necklace came off. And so it fell into the couch cushions at the crime scene. And honestly, the only thing about this episode that I had an issue with was the fact that evidently nobody had already found it. I feel like that crime scene, the necklace was not hidden that well. I mean, y'all know, if you stayed in a hotel, the furniture isn't the kind of big, comfy, oversized furniture that a lot of people have in their homes. It's like made to be easy to wipe down and vacuum because it's supposed to be used by 1 million people. So you have to have it be easy to clean. And it also needs to be like, a lot of times the cushions and stuff don't even come off the sofa, depending. So it just really did not ring true to me that they wouldn't have found this already. But it's part of what we've got to deal with here, so it's fine. And the whole scenario here is her panicking over finding this necklace, as we cut then to Michael and his partner arguing with, I don't know if this is the captain or the lead detective or what we would call him, about how to handle Petra. And it's a weird scene because, like, this is something that I'm always really curious about. And if anybody out there has inside info on this, I would be curious to know. But Michael and his partner, whose name I don't even recall, he is the dynamic between the two of them is hugely adversarial. It does not feel like they're partners. They don't even like really make eye contact. As far as I have noticed in this entire series so far, when we have seen them together, I haven't. Jesse is saying, is anyone else able to hear Natasha? Oh no. Can you not hear me? Can you hear me now? Have I been talking and like no sound the whole time? Oh my God. You guys, I'm sorry, Jesse. Crowdcast has been a disaster. I started this episode on a different session and it just, after about 11 minutes, it just ended the session. And when we started, there were 2 of me. And I don't know why that was happening either. But yeah, it just stopped. So I had to like start a new session and jump in here. I don't know what was going on there, but Crowdcast has been really fucked up lately. And I'm about to write them an email tomorrow because I'm starting to lose my fucking patience. It's been a minute. They've had time to get this stuff resolved. And I don't know what the hell is the deal. Sorry. I'm going to leave this rant in the episode recording as well, because if anybody joins and they're like, why the fuck can't I hear her? That's why. Sorry, everybody. But anyway, yeah. So Michael and his partner, they're not agreeing, and he is hiding this from her because she doesn't know who, like, this is wild to me, honestly. This is one other thing that I find slightly unbelievable, is the fact that the 2 detectives, only one of them has figured out that the woman that Zaz was sleeping with is the hotel owner's wife. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, I guess she knows, but the implication here is that this hasn't gotten out. And I don't know how that would be possible. I'm really curious about that as well, because I know it's a very common side effect of investigations when there's some huge event. People's like personal relationships and affairs wind up being brought to the surface. This happens all the time. How much of the time do the cops just sit on that information because the person is like, please don't tell my wife? Like, genuinely, how often do they? And how often do they just throw the bomb out there and like let the chips fall where they may? I'm curious about it. But the fact that Michael is keeping this from her for his own reasons, and he's kind of gaslighting his partner here. It's just the number of levels that he's lying on at this point, it is truly out of control. So let's see. One piece of evidence comes to light against Petra. We're bringing her in. And this is the thing that he's guarding against, because if they bring her in, then things are going to definitely get aired out, and she isn't going to get the baby. And then Jane is going to keep it, and his life as he sees it will be ruined. And we do get a pretty great little montage of him like out in the street with like a gun and a baby Bjorn, which was actually rather funny. So he gets a text from Petra that says, there's a problem, we need to talk. And I just was like, dude, you have got to get her the fuck off your phone. First of all, do not put her in your phone as Petra. Put her as literally any other name. Like, this is on the DL 101, okay? Secondly, do not have her texting your commonly used personal phone. Find another way. Whether, I mean, there's all kinds of apps that are meant to have spoof numbers and whatever. Do that. Is it foolproof? No, but it's at least like 1 degree of separation. Have her join like Discord and use a fake name on there and talk to you. Like, this is just sloppy, sir. It's just sloppy. So we then have, Jane, and she is kind of looking at the area of the hotel where the crime scene, like the whole floor has been cut off. And so all of these rooms are basically available. And she's sort of scoping out whether or not she can get one of those rooms to lose her virginity and with Michael that night. And he says something about how he was actually really close to Zaz, and it was just a shock to lose him. And she puts her hand on his arm. And as she does this, she gets this feeling and starts to breathe a little hard and pulls away from him and clearly looks freaked out. And I love this. This is the kind of thing that I feel like when you are distant enough from the moments in your life where you have this happen, it starts to feel like this isn't exactly how it goes. It feels theatrical and a little over the top. But I remember these moments of like any physical contact with a person that I was into. It was like there was an electric charge between us that I could feel jumping off them onto me. It was wild. And there's just no explaining it, because you can say it's just your imagination because of how you feel about that person. It does not feel like a psychological thing. It feels like a physical reaction that is happening due to the contact. Like there is you know what I'm saying? Like a chemical thing. And this happens more than once this episode, him touching her or her touching him, and her just kind of beginning to freak out. And as somebody who was engaged to one guy and then met a man I wound up actually marrying while still engaged, let me tell you, it is extremely inconvenient. This isn't what you want at all. Like, I understand her constantly telling herself it's nothing. That's what I did too. Brendan, I met Brendan when I was engaged to Ruben. And when I met Brendan, the very first thought I had after meeting him, and he cracked a joke, it was very funny, and he walked away, and the very first thought I had was, you're going to marry him. And my entire body, like, rejected it. Everything in me was like, whoa, girl, what the fuck? Okay, calm down. Jesus Christ. It was me saying to myself what I would have said to a friend who said that out loud. Just, all right, I get that he's cute and that's fine. Why don't you chill the fuck out for a second? It only got worse. There are, I think, weird bonds that happen. And for whatever reason, when I met Brendan, I fucking knew immediately. And when I virtually met Owen, same thing. I saw his photo and I was like, why does this feel like, this feels very important. I feel like this is, oh no, I'm feeling the thing again. And I just truly fucking sympathize with her through all this episode. She is trying to make herself feel about Michael the way she feels about Raphael. And that isn't possible. You can't make yourself feel the way you do about one person about somebody else. It just doesn't work. And the more you try, the more obvious it becomes that the feeling is really different, which is just so frustrating. Like, all it does is kind of draw a huge contrast between the two emotions. And it starts to be that you begin comparing your reaction to everything about each of them and start to really notice how different your reaction is. It's not a good place to be. And I am so glad that she doesn't wind up sleeping with Michael, truly. But I felt so bad that, like, she has finally sort of mentally let go of her attachment, not completely, as we see in the episode. Like, she has this thing with the white flowers in the room that are losing their petals. So still, like, the losing of the virginity and the promise that she made to God and all of that, that still matters. But I believe her when she says to her abuela, I don't think that God is going to punish me or hold it against me. I really don't. I think that she has matured and grown to a point where she has a better understanding that the logistics on paper are not as important as the intent. And so I was rooting for her to at least get to have sex for the first time. But I also knew he's lying. And if she sleeps with him and then finds out what he's been keeping from her, it's gonna fucking break her heart. It will be devastating. And, like, it would be devastating to me as a person who has had casual sex and who does not attach the kind of worth and judgment to it that she does. It would still be devastating. But in her case, that is like something that I don't know how she comes back from it, because she is going to have such a screwed up relationship with sex to begin with due to everything that's happened. How is she ever going to trust anybody after that, you know? So what I want is for her to find out and have it out with him and decide if this is really what she wants. But right now, and I appreciate Michael asks multiple times, are you sure you want to do this? I will say I appreciate him checking in with her. More than once he stops and he's not being pushy about it. However, he's lying to her. He is. And the fact that he is continuing to lie about something of this magnitude, and he's going to not only take her virginity, but marry her. Michael, sir, I am not on your team, kiddo. I don't know what you can do to come back from this for me other than coming clean before anything else happens. And honestly, I'm not sure that he's gonna do that. He has had so many chances and he doesn't. Instead, he gaslights her. So she is like upstairs and she is looking at the rooms kind of, you know, also thinking, I think that maybe she could run into Michael. And she turns and sees Petra hanging around outside the crime scene, acting really sketchy. She takes a pill at one point, which we find out is a Xanax. And Jane hides, watches as Michael shows up and then gets on an elevator with Petra while acting in a sort of like panicked way. He is not behaving like somebody who's just having a normal conversation. He is looking like he is in the crosshairs and freaking out. So Jane, after seeing this, she rushes downstairs to greet them as they get off of the elevator. And on the way down, Petra is telling him about the necklace and everything. Obviously, she's not putting it in text, which is very smart of her. But when they get off the elevator and Jane rightfully is like, something feels off. I don't like this. What were you talking to her about? He totally gaslights her and tells her that it must be hormonal stuff. And at first, she is like acting correct. She is disgusted that he would say that to her and grossed out at how dismissive he is being. And later, when she decides that it was all in her head, because Petra is a very good manipulative bitch, she is out here apologizing to Michael multiple times for doubting him. And it's so hard to watch her apologize to him. I hate it so much. Hate it. So we have her running into, first there's the moment where she is, I forgot to mention it, but she's about to wait on a table and it turns out to be Raphael's father and sister and his wife. And his sister and the wife are having an affair actively still. I thought it might be a one-time thing. It is not. It is going to be an ongoing thing. She does make it clear she's not leaving her husband. And evidently Luisa is like, all right, I guess. She wanted to literally run away together. And I was like, girl, come on. You have to know this bitch is not doing that. And I appreciated that she says very quickly, bitch, you know I'm not doing that. But they are fucking around, and that leads to the alarm being pulled later, which kind of winds up saving Jane from a big mistake. But anyway, Jane goes to wait on them, realizes who they are, and then bails. And this is the first time that she had met Raphael's father, and it's pretty terrible. She runs into Raphael out on like the sort of, I don't know what to call this area, but there's this portion of the hotel that sort of overlooks the water and like a marina. It's not really a deck. I guess you could call it a patio. And he asks her advice for how to write a press release because she's a writer, which it means a lot to her that he keeps calling her that. And essentially, he's asking, how do I distance myself from my college roommate and my, best friend without it seeming harsh? And my dad's trying to protect the hotel's reputation. And she makes a face. He says, what? She says nothing. And then she stops and says, I'm sorry, I'm judgy. You should know that about me. You may end up having a really judgy kid. And honestly, I am so glad that she says she's judgy. Look, most of us are pretty judgmental. We act like we're not, and that being judgmental and being closed-minded, those are not the same thing. I'm a very open-minded person. People can be who they want, sleep with who they want, identify, whatever. More power to you. However, I am very judgy about the ethics behind certain decisions, about petty stuff is like aesthetic. I don't care. I have a lot of very judgy thoughts about myself as well. So it was very refreshing to have her just admit that straight out. And he asks, so what does judgy sound like? And she says, you talk a lot about not wanting to be like your father, but you can say that all you want. It's the actions that actually prove that you mean it. And what does that look like? And when she says that, he puts his hand on her knee and says, I hope the baby's judgy. And I was like, I'm sorry, Raphael. Sir, you know exactly what you were doing. Sir, he's acting all fucking innocent. I'm just putting my hand on your knee to emphasize my point. Oh, really? Were you? Were you, sir? Mm-hmm. No. He knows. He knows. And look, am I super judgy of him for that? Yes. Am I mad at him? Not exactly. It's hard to be mad at him because I know that she likes him back. And so if she were rejecting this and obviously didn't want it, it would feel very different. But because I know the reaction she's having, part of me is like, I appreciate that what you're doing is interfering with her feelings for Michael because she needs to be saved from him. That's the point I'm at now, where anything that sort of stops her from overcommitting to Michael before she finds out the truth about what's happening, I am a fan of. So as this is all going on, Shamara gets a huge gift basket, and she gets really upset at one point because she's opening the gift basket and it's just a bunch of like standard stuff that is from his, like, he's got like a hot sauce and a few other things. So she thinks that this is just like a pre-made gift basket that doesn't mean anything personal, because she misses, buried in the middle of it, which she finds later, a bracelet that is engraved and specifically for her. And she is battling against her mother, who wants her to tell Jane ASAP about who her father is. And then we see Rogelio, is that his name? Oh, I have forgotten already. He is checking into the hotel that Jane works at. And I was like, bruh, what are you doing? He is not going to tell her, as it turns out. He is going to just hang around her and kind of push his luck in order to get Shamara to tell her sooner. Which, honestly, it's like a sucky thing to do because she has already told him to respect her wishes as a mother and her judgment. But at the same time, I can understand that now that he is here and he knows, he just wants it out there. You know, I understand his position. She made it pretty clear where she stands, and you said you understood, and now here you are. What are you doing? So this whole thing is going on, and he is checking in, and she runs into him at the front desk. And it's an amazing moment because she loses her breath when she looks at him, and he has to be like, I understand. Inhale, exhale, which is what he says to her in the room when she finds out she's pregnant, by the way, when she's just imagining that he's there. But the reason that she's kind of all over the place in the hotel is because her friend has convinced her, if you saw Petra taking pills and she's got a drug problem, what if Zaz was a dealer and this is all connected to that? You want to look into whether or not she has a drug problem, and gets Jane into the headspace of going and looking through Petra's stuff. So Jane uses this pretext of I'm bringing up like the dry cleaning, and begins to go through Petra's things and looks up, and Petra is standing right behind her. And honestly, I could never be like a burglar or anything like that. I would just be way too paranoid. And in my opinion, the fact that Jane doesn't check all of the like bathrooms and everything before she starts rifling through things is a fucking amateur hour. I have never burgled a place, but you had better believe I am checking literally everywhere a person could be before I start doing something that when I am caught is going to obviously look bad. That said, Jane just tells the truth to Petra once she's caught. And it really does save a lot of time and gets to the heart of things. And while Petra is lying through her teeth about what's really going on, I have to admit I appreciated how much silly bullshit was sidestepped by Jane just being like, look, I saw you taking some pills and I thought you had a problem and I was looking for it. I was checking into things. And Petra, to her credit, says, hey, look, you're giving your child away to fucking strangers. So yeah, you're going to want to check up on us. Like, I'm not mad at you for that. And explains to her that she got this prescription for Xanax back when Raphael got cancer, and that she's had, like, it's basically a month's supply, but she's only ever taken 3 pills. And I'm really curious how true that is. But either way, it sounds good. Jane, buys it in the moment. And as this is all happening, Michael is going to the crime scene, getting the necklace and about to put it in his pocket. And he turns around and look, the necklace is like, you could see it. If they hadn't found it yet, come on, guys. But he turns around and it's in his hand when Raphael is there. And he holds his hand out to shake Michael's hand. And Michael, because that's the hand he has the necklace in, doesn't shake back, and it just presents as kind of aggressively standoffish and shitty right off the bat. But of course, Michael is also feeling really protective of Jane because he knows how she feels about Raphael. He has seen the way she's acting. So he has his, like, actual genuine aggressiveness going on. And him and Raphael butt heads quite heavily here, where Raphael wants to know what's going on with the crime scene. And Michael, he says, I want to speak to the lead detective. And Michael's like, that's me. What can I do for you? I love the look Raphael gets, this exhale. Why don't we start with you telling me what you think happened here? I'm sorry I can't discuss the details of an open investigation. The press is all over this. I've got to tell them something. The press is not my problem. Well, I have a right to know what's happening in my hotel. And he puts his hand up and, like, touches Michael, stops him, actively, physically stops him. Not a good look on a detective. Raphael, what are you doing? This is part of us seeing a little bit of the entitled bad boy thing coming out again. And Michael says, my crime scene trumps your hotel. And honestly, I kind of felt him in that moment. I know Michael's in the wrong in general, and I know that he is hiding shit and being hugely shady. But the idea that Raphael is just like, well, it's my hotel, so I deserve to know. That's really not how this works, guy. Like, it's the kind of thing where you just really are expecting special treatment. Like, you're not potentially also a suspect. Dude, get with the program. Like, you definitely are on their list. They might not have it shortened down yet, but you don't get to make those kinds of demands. And this is when his partner walks up and starts talking to Raphael. Says, don't get frustrated. Don't get upset. He's frustrated. You can't take it personally. We're trying to figure out what happened here. And did you know his girlfriend? And Raphael says Zaz didn't have a girlfriend. And she gives him a, like, sympathetic look and says, that you know of. Which really clearly, like, gets in his head a little bit. So this is amazing. Later on, he's talking to Petra, and Petra says, hey, did you have any luck in tracking down Aaron? And he's like, what? And she says, Zaz's brother. You mentioned him earlier. And I love this moment because what he could say is, I never told you what his name was. I don't even know his name. But he doesn't show his hand. He just gets a knowing look and suddenly is starting to put some things together. And thinks to himself clearly, oh, really? And then says to her, they're speculating that Zaz had a girlfriend. I'm sure we'll find out who it was soon. And to give like her a little bit of a compliment, which I hate to do, but honestly, Petra is really good with her poker face here. She just has this open, innocent expression. There is no indication, if you didn't already know what he is beginning to put together, you wouldn't fucking guess at all that she is concerned, stressed, guilty, nothing. It is not on her face at all. It's masterful, frankly. And I think that is making it worse, really. I think that was the confirmation he needed beyond anything else, and that any further ability she shows to pretend it wasn't her sleeping with him is going to make him even more aware of how dangerous she is and what a good liar she is. You know, if it hadn't been such a damning thing that she knew the dude's name, she could have just said, oh, his brother, I've heard him mention him once or twice. But she acted like, I didn't know he even had one. I didn't know him at all. She had to overdo it on the ignorance thing so that when she just literally brought up an actual name later, then it just really shot her in the foot. So if it weren't such a definitive bit of proof, she might have been able to pull this off with how good she is at the act. But it's too much. And I think he's really going to start being a little bit more, not only cautious around her, but he's going to be eyeballing her a lot. You know, I feel like he's going to be potentially following her a little bit. And I'm not sure how he would find out if she had been sleeping with Zaz at this point, because he's dead. The affair is over. I would assume anything in her phone to do with him, she's deleted because she doesn't want anything linking her to a murder victim. And I don't know about Zaz's phone and where that is, if her number's in there. They have the photos, but I don't think they would share those with him unless it was part of the, you know, her being questioned. So I'm trying to think what it is that she could do that would cause him to find out, like, any further details. And I don't know what that would be. I should mention, too, later on, Michael comes to her, and she had there's room keys that are coded, and they have a time stamp when you check in and out of your room. And she had said that she was in their suite, and her key proved that. But her mother's key, and her mother is in a wheelchair, was used to get in and out of a stairwell that has no cameras. And, of course, her mother wouldn't be walking up and down stairs. So it's very clear Petra used that card. And when Michael asks her what she was doing in that stairwell, she says, I can't say. And with everything that's on the line, the fact that she won't tell him, man, that really has to be big. I can't imagine what is so important that she's on a potential list of suspects, and she is still not going to fess up about whatever this is. I'm really curious about it. And when she says, I can't say, it seems genuinely painful to her that she can't say. Like, this isn't her protecting her pride, it doesn't feel like. This feels like she's protecting somebody else. And I genuinely don't know how long she's going to be able to keep that up, because what she manages to do eventually, because Michael is like, dude, when they see this, they're going to begin to put it together, and you're going to be brought in for questioning, and what the fuck is going to happen? Petra says, well, then I'll just tell them that you tampered with a crime scene, and nothing will happen to me, but you'll definitely be in trouble. And I was like, nothing will happen to you. If you tell them that he tampered with a crime scene, he tampered because he was hiding something for you. Yeah, he would be in massive trouble, but you're acting like you would just sail off into the sunset, and I don't see that happening. And I don't feel like Michael's thinking clearly, because I feel like he'd realize this. But essentially, she leaves him with, well, go figure it out. And just leaves him there holding the bag. Which, this is what you get, Michael. Your lies are spiraling out of control, and now you have got to, like, cover up for a potential murderer. I don't think she's the murderer, but God knows. So that's what's going on with them. Then we have this whole thing with Jane and Michael, and her setting up this suite in the hotel. She is sitting next to her grandmother in church, and there's this really wild scene where they're all singing to her about what a liar she is. So she finally confesses to her grandmother that she's going to have sex with Michael that night. And I really did appreciate that eventually her grandma calls her and leaves a message saying, even though I don't agree with what you're doing, at least you waited for the man that you're going to marry, and I still love you and I will support you. And she's just trying really hard, I think. And I appreciated it. So, and I also want to mention that Jane says to her grandmother, because her grandmother says something like, I forbid it. And Jane says, Abuela, I was telling you because I didn't want to lie to you. I was not asking your permission. I'm doing this. And she seems really at peace with that and very certain about it. She goes to the hotel to meet him and runs into Raphael at the memorial they're hosting for Zaz, which this hotel holds more parties than I have ever seen. Like, it's wild. Party every fucking night, basically. So they start playing this song that she really likes. And Raphael is like, well, why don't we dance? And there's too much dang chemistry when they dance. And it's obvious that she's kind of having a moment and she has to pull away from him. It's too much. And I really understood her just stopping and being like, okay, you know what? I've got to go. Bye. And when she opens the room door and Michael is standing there, she's trying to convince herself this is the guy that she really wants. It's not really working, because this isn't how she pictured it. She wants a perfect romantic evening to lose her virginity. And honestly, after having waited this long, I don't blame her one little bit. I didn't really care about that personally, but if you've built something up for this long, yeah, you want it to be idyllic. And the setting, all of this looks great, but you've got another man in your heart. You don't want that happening during this moment. Like, oof, this fucking sucks. So they're making out, they're on the bed, and she accidentally hits a button and the automatic, like, hotel TV turns on. I'm Raphael Solano. This is just honestly so good, you guys. We hope this is an experience that you never forget. Let us fulfill your every need. Your pleasure is my pleasure. Oh my God. And unfortunately, it could be awkward just with her knowing how she feels about him and this interruption. But Michael knows too. So it's just as bad for him. He's fully aware. You know, like, it's just awful. And she's trying to be cool. She's trying to go with it. They are continuing to kiss. She's looking at the flowers, dropping their petals on the nightstand, and obviously preoccupied and not into this. He stops again and asks, are you okay? Are you sure you want to do this? And she's saying, she does. And then we go to the hallway where Louisa is stopping to get some powdered donuts out of the vending machine as she's over here fucking her ex. sees her father get off the elevator, hides, and has to buy some time before he walks into the room and finds his naked wife on the floor waiting for her lover to return, and panics and pulls the fire alarm, which saves a few people unexpectedly. And I do like, too, that both Jane and Michael are kind of like, oh, well, it's probably nothing. Let's just keep it going. But finally, somebody over the announcement is just like, this is not a drill. We definitely, we gotta evacuate. I want to mention, too, that when her ex leaves the hotel room, she uses that lock to kind of hold the door open so that when she and her husband leave, Louisa can run into their room and grab her stuff and change and get out of there, which was smart thinking, because I was kind of wondering, how are you going to bail when you're just in a robe? What are you going to do? Meanwhile, as Michael and Jane are getting dressed again, he says something about how maybe your abuela put in a call to the man upstairs. And she is starting to be like, I don't know what to do. I thought this is what I wanted. And now I'm kind of relieved that this happened, So there's a scene that I didn't want to derail and get too much into. It's not ultimately that important, but her abuela goes to see Rogelio and talk to him about that she doesn't like how he went to the hotel, had a selfie with Jane. He basically charms the pants off her. He gives her another gift basket, and this is what leads to her daughter noticing that this has got something extra in it that she didn't have in her own basket. And the two of them actually have a pretty cute moment of her abuela saying to Shamara, I think you will still have your fairy tale ending. I believe that for you. And then she has to ruin it by saying you just have to keep your legs closed. And I was like, bitch, damn it. How'd you have to shit all over it like that? So we have a moment here at the end where Jane is looking at Michael, talking about how things felt off. And she doesn't know how to say it. And I really like the narrator being like, what could she tell him? That she had feelings for another man? Or was this just hormones that had led to an untrustworthy gut? And she finally says, it was my grandma. She was really upset. And I thought I could push past it, but I don't know. Maybe I can't. And Michael finally says, what are we waiting for? Maybe we should just move the wedding up. And I was like, oh God, this didn't occur to me that he would want to do that. But Jane doesn't react happily to this suggestion. She clearly agrees because she tells her mom and her abuela later that this is what they're doing. But it seems like she is upset by this. Yeah, this sucks. And I just hate her mom and her grandma are so excited for her. But Jane, they don't seem to really notice that she isn't as happy as she should be. I don't know. Maybe they just think that she's so stressed, And as she's standing there, a firefly comes up. She catches it, and she makes her last wish that she would go to bed and wake up without feelings for Raphael. And she's holding it in her hand as the light goes out, which I feel like is just meant to symbolize that wish ain't coming true. And then, of course, the narrator has to end it with no fireflies were harmed in the making of this episode, which I did appreciate. I know that they're not real. It's very clearly CGI firefly. Nevertheless, appreciate it. So, yeah, wild episode, guys. I need Michael to come clean. I need it. How much longer are you going to do this, dude? Like, I genuinely don't know what you're thinking. It's going too far. I don't know that you can put the necklace back and nobody notice. Maybe you could like slip it somewhere that it would make sense they wouldn't have found it and just go with it at this point and let things fall where they may. I don't know. If he did, I don't know what Petra would do, because she's acting like she's like able to hold this over his head, and I don't know how much she can. I really don't know like how much they've even said in their texts that could incriminate him. I don't know. I hate this. I hate it. All right. I'm going to wrap up. Thank you guys so much for listening. Appreciate you all. Thank you again to Claire for commissioning this. Until next time. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.